Hey guys, it's James with Millennial Homesteading, and today I wanted to share with you my sandwich bread recipe. Now I know what you're thinking, James, how does sandwich bread help us with self-sufficiency? But if you think about it, the sandwich that you get at the store is about $2 a loaf depending on the brand, and it's been sitting there for probably a week, which means it's got all kinds of preservatives and stuff in it too. So let's get into it, and I'll show you how you can make sandwich bread for $1.37 a loaf. Now I've already got everything laid out for this recipe. You're going to need 460 grams of bread flour, which has a higher protein content than all-purpose flour. I believe all-purpose will work, but I use bread flour. We've also got 26 grams of sugar, which helps the yeast to form a good carbon dioxide content. 9 grams of salt, and 7 grams of yeast. Now, I use grams because measuring your ingredients by weight with baking is more accurate than using teaspoons and cups and so on. But I will put the imperial units in the description below. We've also got a half a cup of whole milk, which you can use skim milk or 2% as well, and a half a stick of salted butter. You can use unsalted as well, but do use butter. So, into our flour, we're going to add our sugar and our salt. And I don't have a whisk, but I'm going to use a fork, but you will whisk all this together just about until it gets all incorporated. About like that. The next thing you'll want to do is bloom your yeast. So I'm going to take a cut right quick and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. To bloom your yeast, you're going to want to add just enough lukewarm water, about 90 to 100 degrees, but definitely no more than 110 degrees, to your yeast. And I will add a pinch of sugar to help give the yeast a little bit of food to work with. And then we will take a clean fork and mix it together. You want the water to be warm enough that the yeast can actually work with it, because yeast, being microscopic organisms, they're not too fond of cold temperatures, but too warm a temperature will also kill them, which is the whole point of pasteurization. Almost forgot that for a second. So we're going to mix it up like that until it's a little bit thinner than pancake batter, and clumps like that are fine. And you'll want to set this aside and let it bloom. Okay, now over here we're going to get our butter melting. Now you'll want to watch this so that it doesn't get so hot that it starts to separate. We're not going for clarified butter, we're just going for melted butter. But I'm not going to sit here and make you watch this, so we'll come back when this is done. So now our butter has fully melted, but we want it to be cool enough that it won't kill the yeast when it touches it in the dough. So I'm going to take our half cup of milk and pour it in with the hot butter, which will reduce the temperature enough that it won't hurt the yeast. And it's still a little warm, so I'll give it some time to cool down just a little bit more. Besides, our yeast needs just a little bit more time to bloom. So now our butter is cool enough that we can add it to the dough without harming the yeast. So what we're going to do first is make a little divot for the yeast to live in. And we're going to pour our yeast into said divot. Now, depending on how much water you gave it will determine how runny, I suppose, the yeast is. The runnier it is, the less scraping you'll have to do, but you don't want it so runny that there's no air bubbles in it, because this is starting to do the leavening. We're starting to leaven our bread at this point right now. And then we will take our fork, or whisk at this point, and cover up the yeast blob so that it doesn't get scalded. Not that it would get scalded, but we are adding hot water now. So we will take our milk and butter mixture, which is still rather warm, not too warm. It's in that 100-degree range, but we've got hot water here. We're going to add that, about a half a cup. I have a little more than half a cup here because it all depends on your humidity in your region. We're not going for a high hydration dough. We're not going for a specific amount of water to flour ratio here. We just want it to be all incorporated. And here I'm using a Danish dough whisk, which is a lot better than using your normal wire whisk, because as you can see, the dough falls away from it a little bit easier. And I'm going to need just a little bit more water here, but I may not even have to use the reserve I put away. And it's all by feel, it's all by preference. There's no way to really mess this loaf up. Like I said, we're not looking for a specific baker's ratio, we're just looking to incorporate everything. And it looks like we're almost there. Now this is not a no-knead dough. You will need to do a little bit of manual labor, but I guarantee you the results are worth it. All right. We want to make sure and get all this doughy goodness off of here so that we have as big of a loaf as we can get. We're done with our dough whisk. So now we will take some flour and dust our counter space. Not too much, but enough that it doesn't stick. And throw a little on your hands. You'll then take your mass and put your bowl away in the overcrowded sink and begin to knead your dough. Applying a little extra flour here and there as needs be so that your hands don't stick to it. We're looking for a smooth consistency, but it doesn't need a certain amount of kneading. Some recipes call for vigorous kneading for, say, 5 minutes, but I've discovered with this loaf, extra kneading may result in a airier crumb, the inside of the bread, but for me and my family, just getting it baked is really what we care about. You see I'm starting to stick there, so I'll take a little bit more flour and no more sticky. And I know my technique for kneading is probably not the best, but I'm still learning. I'm hoping to incorporate sourdough starter into this recipe, because how awesome would it be to reduce that yeast cost? Because remember I said that this loaf costs about $1.37 to make. How cool would it be to take away probably 30 of those cents using homemade sourdough starter? But we've reached our smooth consistency, smooth-ish, smooth enough. And it is at this point that we will take our dough and put it into another bowl, liberally floured. And we will leave it in here, covered with a towel to proof. And this can take, depending on the temperature of your kitchen, it can take anywhere from 25 minutes to an hour. It's all about the size of it. You want it to double in size. So once it's doubled in size, I'll see y'all back here. Okay guys, so we are not quite double in size, but you can tell it will spring back somewhat. Not a whole lot. It does leave the divots in there, But like I said earlier, this is not a high hydration, sourdough, anything special like that. This is a simple sandwich bread. So what we're going to do now is we're going to degas it. You probably heard it squeak just then, which is always funny for me. And we've degassed it, and we're actually going to start forming it into our loaf. Alrighty. So it is at this point that we will grab our loaf pan, and I really like these loaf pans. I don't know who makes them. I don't remember where I got it, but these have a special non-stick coating that you don't even have to really clean it out when you're done. I just kind of dust it out with a rag, and it's clean. No sticking, no burning. Excellent stuff. And then we just kind of pat it into place, get into the corners, and then we let it sit here, covered, and let it rise again. And while this is rising, be sure and preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'll put the Celsius conversion in the header up here somewhere on the screen. But 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to put it in there once it's done rising for 35 minutes. Okay guys, here we are. So we've been rising for probably 30-45 minutes. The time doesn't matter, but you want it to look like that. You want it to be nice and domed over the top. You want it to be not too high, but you want it to have some good volume to it. And we're also going to use our dimple check, our poke test. And you saw the dough gave, but then it sprang back a little bit, but not completely. That's exactly what you want. And so we're going to go ahead and get this guy in the oven. All right, so here we go. We're going into the oven with it. Preheated once again to 350 degrees. Squeaky stove. And we're going to set our timer here to 35 minutes. And I'll see y'all in 35 minutes. All right, the moment is at hand. Look at that. I wish YouTube had smell-o-vision because this is amazing. Now when your bread is done out of the oven, be sure and put it on a cooling rack to allow good airflow underneath the loaf so that it cools evenly. And you should allow your bread to cool completely before you cut into it. But that's easier said than done sometimes. So there you have it, y'all. A simple and delicious sandwich bread recipe that you and your family are sure to enjoy. And the best part is, it doesn't cost nearly as much as the leading brands, and you know exactly what's in it. So if you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, and leave a comment, and maybe even subscribe. Let me know what you thought, and let me know any good ideas for the future. So once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Y'all didn't think I was going to actually make a bread video without showing you the crumb, did you? A little ASMR for those that are into that. There we go. That's nice. Thanks for watching.